Hi there, this is of course Nick Dutch back on the camera again one more time, and look what I got for Christmas. That's right, you guessed it right, okay? It's a tarot pack, it's got a little book that goes with it. Do I rate the book? No, I don't. Now I'm going to read out something from this book so you can make up your own mind, okay? It says here, can I read my own cards? I've often been asked whether it is unlucky to read your own cards. The answer to that question is undoubtedly no. However, it is rare that you will get a fully revealing answer to a question, or even that you will understand it, even if the cards are as clear as day. It is only when reading for another person that the full subtlety of the tarot reading comes into its own. Really? I mean, seriously, like, really? Are you trying to tell me that, you can't write down a question that you would like to ask somebody else on a piece of paper, and then the next day come back to it and read it as if that was somebody else who's written it? That would still be reading your own question. So, what's the issue going on there, basically? And that's that, although it's great that the author is saying it's not unlucky to do your own tarot readings, why doesn't she just explain that the idea of lucky versus unlucky is just like a really stupid thing anyway, okay? Why doesn't she just explain more about what the process of reading tarot is? Instead we got some pretty little pictures there, and we got very basic tarot spreads there. Let's show you a picture. Oh dear, isn't that nice, okay? But it's not really, the most in-depth manual on introspective understanding using a combination of symbols that I've actually come across. But whilst I'm here, and I'm taking a bit of time away from work whilst I'm waiting for a particular email to come through from somebody out there, I'm going to go through the Major Arcana with you, just basically for a bit of a laugh. The Fool. Pretty classic, pretty basic, okay? Got a jester-like character. You got a few things missing from this that you would normally see in your traditional tarot pack, namely a wild creature attacking the legs or the posterior of the Fool character. So we don't have that. We've already seen, therefore, a massive departure away from some classic or traditional tarot symbolism. But there is still this, the allusion to, one would say, foolishness, but what that is in context, it's still not really being demonstrated by the imagery itself. The Magician, much more traditional, very Rider-Waite style or esque, okay? We got the infinity sign above his head, which is essentially what the floppy hat of the standard traditional magician is supposed to be representing. Speaking about infinity or awareness of the self as an individual spirit who is not bound to the body, so when you die there's life after death, so it's basically talking about either reincarnation or heaven. You got the basic tools on the table, and it's also even given you a little monkey or dog-like character on the working table, and only 2.5 legs of the table are visible. So bit of the ancient, bit of the modern thrown in there. Obviously very, very much more pagan stroke Wiccan orientated. You've got a proper pentagram on the table itself, so it's moving towards a kind of like a witchcraft type message rather than necessarily a pure classic tarot message, but with some allusions to classic tarot imagery coming in there. High Priestess, very, very traditional, 2 pillars, High Priestess in the middle, and she's holding a scroll which has got the word Torah written on it. I don't know whether you've ever seen a Torah in a synagogue. It's actually slightly larger than that anyway. You get the idea of passing on some kind of message. But it's strange that they have chosen the word Torah when essentially it's the High Priestess is a Christian symbol, speaking of the Holy Spirit. And in this particular case, they've got this sort of like Egyptian, Eye of Horus or Eye of Ra type symbol on the top of her head. What's really going on there? There's again a bit of a pagan departure onto another level there. Okay, the Empress. Not much to write home about her. I suppose you can extrapolate your own meaning there. Delicate, moving towards middle age or slightly frumpy in appearance. Quite boring, but with a crescent moon on her dress. and surrounded by grain. Again, you got this kind of like pagan Wiccan feeling coming through the style of the artwork. But one thing I do like about the artwork is the fact you've got the black border lines of the characters, which makes it look almost as if it was a traditional classic woodcut. Obviously, it isn't a traditional woodcut. This is painted to look like that, but it does give it that kind of like this is what things used to look like kind of feeling. The Emperor. This is moving back towards sort of Crowley Thoth type symbols. You got the ram's head, you got the shield with the eagle upon it. I don't quite think that they're using the colours the way that some traditional tarot packs would use them for the right purposes or the right meanings. But on the other hand, again, looking back to what that kind of character should look like. I suppose that they've chosen this chunky style. It does detract from the meaning to a certain degree, because I think it's looking a bit cartoon-like, and when it looks a bit cartoon-like, I can't quite take it quite take it seriously enough. At least not at this stage. The more I play with it, the easier it'll get. It's like everything else. The more you play with it, the more fun you can have with it, kind of thing. Or the better it gets. That's the phrase. The more you play with it, the better it gets. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. Never mind. Okay. The High Priest, more like your classic Pope image. Triple cross at the top there, which I think actually came from a particular mystery tradition. I can't remember off the top of my head. But often referring to the three worlds of whichever particular mythology: mind, body, and spirit, heaven, earth, hell. Inner world, outer world, celestial and astral, and so on and so forth. You get the message. A multi-world message of identity, and the same reiterated with the crown. So in that particular respect, it's going back to the Oswald Worth type imagery that I've mentioned before, and also how that connects with the writings of Elizabeth H. as well. Okay. The Lovers. Absence of a parting of the ways message within the artwork here, but definitely much more to do with traditional romantic love. Again, suggesting that this is moving towards a pagan interpretation of what tarot is about, rather than moving towards a classic personal development and change type, or indeed a religious message from this particular tarot pack. Okay, so it's more to do with sumptuousness, nature. There's a feeling of, well, there's obviously sex in the air as well. And if you actually look more closely, this doesn't quite connect properly with the symbolism. There's a serpent climbing up the tree. So it's more like an Adam and Eve type message, which doesn't connect well when we're talking about using the symbols moving towards responsibility, unless of course you take the psychological interpretation of the creation story of Eve playing around with the apple, Adam playing around with the apple, and the man upstairs getting really pissed off and saying, hey, you two, bugger off, you know what I mean? As being the moment of taking responsibility and moving away from the protection of your parents, which some people see it as. But that's only some people. There's no hard and fast singular meaning to anything biblical. So maybe that's basically what's really going on there. Okay. Again, a return to the classic tradition with the chariot here. You got a warlike character, shield being held in his middle, reference to Crowley Thoth if you think about it there. And two sphinxes. There's not much difference in the sphinxes at the bottom, so is it really necessarily a mention of opposites? Difficult to say. But you got your cuboid, the proper, cuboid chariots area. So that's going back to Tarot of Marseille's style. So it's all connecting there bit by bit, if you get my drift. Now, strength, again, this one is returning to tradition, because part of the message of the strength card is just like the story of pulling a thorn out of a lion's paw. You know what I mean? Then the lion is sort of like starts being nice to you. You can be loving to something that would otherwise be frightening, and it's therefore an expression of love and compassion, or caring for something which is in otherwise disgusting or frightening, or something that you're afraid of, facing your fears, and so on and so forth. So it doesn't mean strength. Okay, the strength card very rarely refers to strength, depending upon the style of artwork. But what they're trying to do with this tarot pack, as I'm sure you can tell, despite this very simple journey through it, is doing some references to tradition, some references to something a little more modern, okay, as well as trying to fit it into the modern theological zeitgeist of paganism the way it is at the moment. Let's move on. Okay, the Hermit. This one is different to the Crowley Thoth because he's not holding his cloak around the lantern. It's different, sorry, no, I'm getting confused now. It's different to the Prediction Tarot because he's not holding the cloak around the lantern. And he doesn't actually have a particular goal, which he would have if he was going within the Crowley Thoth Tarot, because then you got the egg with the serpent around it, which is essentially a goal or a treasure that the individual is trying to go for, namely spiritual enlightenment in that particular context, or any particular goal in a reading context. So in this particular case, much more a question of simplicity, probably literal austerity, but also wisdom. It is rather curious that they've only kept the illumination of the lamp to one side of the staff and not to the other side, almost as if he himself cannot see the illumination of the lantern, which is really rather curious if you think about it, because the illumination speaks about intelligence, it speaks about revealing or bringing forth a new idea to people, or a new level of understanding. Okay, Wheel of Fortune. Bit of a connection to the universe or world card here, because you don't, if my memory serves me correctly, you traditionally have the four creatures on the universe or the world card. Okay, that's talking about the end times. That's a reference to the four living creatures in Revelations. You don't normally, or sorry, let me rephrase that. You don't always have that on the Wheel of Fortune. But it has a kind of like four elements kind of like thing to it, but they're all winged creatures. The one on the bottom right could be an eagle, and all the rest of them appear to be vaguely angelic. You got a serpent and a wolf. I suppose the serpent could be referring to either knowledge or destruction. The wolf could be referring to instinct, and the Sphinx looks incredibly bored. But you've also got four symbols around the wheel, which is very earth, air, fire, and water-like as far as I can tell. This is just the first time I've gone through this particular tarot pack, so essentially, you know, my views on this is going to change with the passage of time. I don't really make all that much of this one. It's traditional. She's holding scales and a sword. Fine. She's not blindfolded. Her eyes appear to be open. We can't quite tell. So she's not a traditional justice as in the British interpretation of justice, or the legal interpretation of justice, necessarily. But why on earth would they give her a pyramid in the background? There was some allusions to Egyptian mysticism in some of the earlier cards, such as the High Priestess. But essentially there are some serious questions as to the quantity and quality of Egyptian-ness that there really is in tarot. Because there was an Egyptian revival, just like there was a Celtic occult revival. And these movements put their ideas into tarot during the past couple of hundred years, as I'm sure you've come to understand. These are movements, these aren't necessarily proof positive that there was an Egyptian connection. Although, of course, tarot started out as the Chinese money games and eventually came, steadily westward, and would have picked something up from the Middle Eastern stroke Egypt's type environment. But how much and when that happened, that's what's hard to say. It's difficult to say when tarot actually reached Europe, although we've got, evidence of cards going back 5 centuries. Okay, we've actually got archaeological evidence of divination cards going back 5 centuries. So divination cards are part of European tradition. We have to, those who are against all this weird heebie-jeebie stuff, basically we've just got to get the heck used to it. Right. What's missing from the Hangman here? the bags of money. There's always bags of money flowing out of the pockets of the hangman, or is traditionally the case, okay? You don't have that in the Book of Thoth. Or do you? No, you don't have that in the Book of Thoth. You got some different varieties of symbolism there. For instance, the hangman is hanging from his foot from an ankh, which is upside down. But this is much more the question of like the traitor imagery, because traitors were hung by one leg, weren't they, in the old days? That's why the hangman often speaks about treachery. But there's no sense of financial loss or paying for something, or there being some kind of connection with corruption. It's not there within this particular rendition of the hangman, which is weird. I always loved the death because it looks so gothic, and I just love gothic imagery. It's just so cool, and I like it. This one does have some similarities to traditional tarot. We got the decapitated heads at the bottom. Don't know whether you can see that there, and it looks the way it should. I think they've done quite well with the rendition of death there. They've kept it nice and stark. Predominantly monochrome imagery, a bit of red on the sides to suggest blood, maybe. That was good. Obviously, this is a very symbolism light tarot, really, isn't it? But it means more or less what it should mean. Although I think they could have added a few more things to it, basically. The Temperance. Temperance does mean measured or measuring, and that's basically what she's doing. Sometimes the Temperance has one, presence on two worlds, so to speak, always portrayed in that light. 1 foot on the sea, 1 foot on the shore. Sometimes don't have that here. So again, it's moving to the low resolution, but it does look traditional. Because it does look traditional, I think people will see it in that kind of weird gypsy fortune telling type thing. Now, I like the way they've done this one. Okay, because the Devil card symbolizes to me powerlessness and being enslaved to something. Whether it's a job you hate, whether it's a boss you despise, whether it's some of your addictions, such as, I don't know, an addiction to gambling or drug abuse or whatever, yeah, that means it. That really does sum it up to me, that feeling of being controlled by something more powerful than yourself, which is inexplicable, supernatural, and appears to be observing you. Maybe that's powerlessness over your own immaturity. It fits. It kind of like fits. But again, symbolism light. It doesn't really have that Saturnian twist to it. The lightning struck tower. Why have they done this to make it look like the Tower of Babel? And why did they do the lovers to make that look much more like a Genesis story? Considering that we've got like Egyptian symbolism, we've got pagan symbolism coming into this, they've made this very like multicultural as far as everything else is concerned, haven't they? I mean, yes, they've got the two characters falling, one of them making the legs in the shape of the Hebrew letter as is traditional, more or less. There is the flames, but it doesn't look European. I mean, most of the lightning struck towers you see on tarot look European. So I think that the author is trying to say this has been going on for longer than you think. Or tarot has been in this very form that you're looking at now, for a lot longer than it has. I think that's one of the things that they're trying to suggest here, and therefore it's continuing with the myth of ancient traditions. Very traditional star card, apart from the fact you got a yellow sky, which is much more a daylight kind of like colour if you think about it. And there's no singular star. There's a few stars in the sky, and of course emptying the two containers of water. Not much to write home about with the star. But they will have included the bird in the tree, and that can be a soul image or a spirit guide image for some people. So yeah, It's okay. You know, I'm not too worried about that. I like the way they've done this. They provided the moon in this like double aspect, which means you get the feeling of either an eclipse, the moon moving over the face of the sun, so you're just seeing the radiance of the moon, or maybe it's a question of there being something hidden. Okay, so it's more to do with hidden mysteries than basically anything else. And there is a strong Cancerian message, but we don't have a crab, we got a scarab. Again, that is curious, isn't it? We're used to seeing a crayfish or a scorpion, aren't we? But now we got a scarab. And how does that connect to the fact that we've got two celestial bodies in the sky, one of which could be the sun? The scarab and the sun go together in Egyptian mythology, don't they? And how does that connect to the sun symbolism, the Ra symbolism we saw in the High Priestess? Intriguing. I think it's asking more questions rather than giving any answers. I think the Sun card sums up the emotions of the Sun card very well. Joy, that feeling of celebration. Okay, abundance, nature. It's good. It's good. But you've only got one singular figure enjoying it. I don't get this one. Okay, the Judgment card. The Judgment's have always been one of my favourite tarot cards because it speaks about other people envying you and you envying other people and getting things into perspective as you go through your own growth and progression in life. I don't get that kind of message in this particular Judgment card. I get the message of a proverbial or literal judgment, yes, or being summoned, but the angel in question looks Arabian. Okay, why would the angel look Arabian? And why does it look more like a snake charmer rather than necessarily a celestial being which is guiding you to the heavenly world? Do we have a message of one human being envying or respecting another? No. We just got two beings going up, when it should only be one. And finally, this is what I was talking about when we had like the Wheel of Fortune. We got the four living creatures here. The four living creatures from the Book of Revelations. And they're very traditional. The World card is bang on traditional. I like that. So, I think we got a bit of a mishmash, I think is the word there, of Jewish, Egyptian, pagan, Christian, and lots of other things going on there, which is adding to the mix. Could this be a good divination deck? Yes. Without the shadow of a doubt, I think this could be a very good divination deck. Do I think I could use it? I think I could. Yeah, I'd have to spend more time playing around with it before I get totally one with it. Do I agree with the interpretation written in the book which came with it? No, I most certainly do not. But I've been doing this a while now, and I'm not some kind of like dilettantic individual who thinks like, oh, isn't that sweet? Alright, I just don't do that. And instead I try and, I spend more time playing with the stuff than the average individual. So I guess I know a little more. So there we go. That is my superficial look at the Major Arcana of my new tarot pack. Speak to you in a while. God bless.